Hello and welcome to our Profiles in Leadership series. We are delighted today to have with us Leah Chan Grinvald, who is the Dean of the William S. Boyd School of Law at UNLV and the Richard J. Morgan Professor of Law. Let's start with your installation. What went through your mind that day?
Oh, that was a great day, and one that took quite a bit of planning. As anybody who has planned, large events knows, there's lots of details that go into it. And even though I have great folks on my staff that actually executed, they still want your opinion on the minutia of the details. And so it was really just sort of a culmination of what I saw as great collaboration and teamwork that I want to continue throughout my deanship here at the law school. And so what was going through my mind was, we did it. We made it to the big event.
And no small feat. What was that
right.
one main message that you had for those who were gathered there in the room that day?
The main message I had was that law is accessible to all. And we as a state institution want to be accessible to those who don't think that they can be a lawyer, and even perhaps those that don't necessarily want to be a lawyer, but for whom law can be a powerful tool in their professional lives.
And how did you come up with that? Was this a group think? So you sat down, you had a power, this is where the law school should be headed. Is there something, this is a direction from the top? How did it come about?
Yeah, I mean, it's something actually that I had interviewed with. So sort of, I would say my platform, if you will, coming in, and that's sort of been my philosophy of legal education for, a number of years now. And I've just been, I was very fortunate to work with leaders in my prior institutions that believed similarly. And so I feel like this is just yet another way for me to actually implement what I see, my vision of legal education.
How much of it you think has been informed by your childhood and early education?
Oh, very much so, very much so. So I know you and I have spoken about how, I grew up in Queens, New York. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. And, the first opportunity I had to really get to know a lawyer was in 8th grade, when I had this elective opportunity to take either law or Latin. And so I chose law, and that was really my first introduction as an 8th grader to the world of law and lawyers. And, throughout, since then, really, I've really seen lawyers in so many different capacities in life, both as your, standard, straightforward, lawyer representing clients on a day-to-day basis, both, as, litigation, right? Civil litigation matters, criminal matters, but also as in-house as well. And I also saw lawyers, in other, fields, like business, like compliance, like CEOs. The CEO of my husband's company right now used to be a lawyer, right? And he uses those legal skills and legal knowledge every day. And so just seeing that kind of and reflecting on my own path really shows me and showed me that, legal education, what we do as legal educators is, yes, first and foremost to produce lawyers, but ultimately it's to produce professionals with skill sets that can go out there and problem solve.
I wonder what would have happened if you had chosen Latin.
I know. Right?
Or if your parents would have even let you get
exactly. In. That's right. Exactly. That's right. My SAT scores would have been out of this world. That's how they tried to sell everybody on Latin. But
So then you went to GW.
Yeah.
And while you tell us a bit about your time at both of those institutions.
Oh, they were great. I mean, college was just everyone's dream. I had been dreaming of college since I had been in junior high school. And so it was sort of one of those dreams come true where I was finally there, finally on a college campus, living in the dorms, and just, figuring out who I wanted to be when I got older. I'm still figuring that out. But, it was really just a wonderful developmental opportunity for me
why
to
George
go down.
Washington? Coming from Queens.
Yeah, coming from Queens, exactly. I was the only person to go that far south funny enough, from Queens, New York. So it was, I know it doesn't sound like such a, geographical distance nowadays, but back then it was quite the distance for somebody from Forest Hills, Queens. And so, I just actually had, kind of luck. I had a childhood friend who had also gone to GW. She was a freshman when I was a senior in high school. And she invited me and my two best friends to come visit her. So we took the train down, the Amtrak train down to DC, spent the weekend with her at her dorm, sleeping on the floor. And it just felt right. It was an urban campus. I had grown up sort of in an urban area. I had visited other campuses that were beautiful, lush, green, in Pennsylvania, actually, where you are now. But, it just didn't speak to me the way that the urban campus of GW and the opportunities, for internships that Washington, DC provides did. So that was, after I visited, it was sort of an easy choice.
And what happened after that?
So yeah, I fulfilled my dream. I interned at the White House. I interned for Senator Kennedy and Edward Kennedy of Massachusetts. Not even knowing that 20 years from then I would end up in Boston, Massachusetts myself. But I just really had an amazing opportunity that set me up for success in law school. And when I came to law school, I really did debate whether I should stay in Washington, D.C. I think at that point, my career paths had changed a bit. Thinking about the law, I had thought I wanted to go into diplomacy after law school, and so DC had been something I'd gone to studied in the Elliott School of International Affairs to sort of get my grounding. And I thought, okay, and then the next step is law school, likely in the Washington DC area, either at GW or Georgetown. But at that point, I'd sort of become a little bit jaded on politics, and thought about, sort of thinking about how can I help more of the, domestic community, thinking about, what my parents were going through. My father was a small business owner, so that was sort of a shift in my thinking. And my father lured me back to New York with promises of dim sum breakfasts being delivered, and he delivered on that. So he would, yeah, I know, it was pretty awesome. So every few days he'd drive by with hot dim sum for my breakfast. So that was I couldn't beat that offer. So
and NYU, were you thinking about IP then, or was that something that came later?
Definitely something that came later. I mean, when and I don't want to categorize us as in the same genre of law students, but when I went to law school, the whole movement, the intellectual property movement as an academic legal field was still very nascent. And so we had maybe a copyright law class that I took, and then actually got lucky to take with then visiting Professor Jessica Littman, and so taught copyright by one of the foremost copyright scholars of the time, and I really enjoyed it. But that was about it. That was all they had to offer at NYU Law when I went. And so IP as a legal field that I could see myself practicing in didn't really come to me until I went in-house, honestly, and really then became the global corporate counsel at TaylorMade, where I was routinely advising on trademark matters, copyright matters, international enforcement matters. And so these days, I think our law students have a really rich array of concentration choices to choose from, intellectual property law being one of them. And so it's lovely to see how that has progressed to give our students more choices and more insights, I think, into their legal career pathways.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds almost like you stumbled into IP.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really did. I did a pro bono project my last year at Latham and Watkins before I went in-house, and I represented a nonprofit company or organization, really. They were still in their beginning stages, but one of the first things they knew they needed was a trademark. And so I was able to help them, working with a supervising attorney and a paralegal. I was able to help them file for that trademark, strategize with them on the best mark, strategize on how they should be using their mark in order to maintain their trademark, going forward once they received their registration. So it was super neat to do that. And then that really opened my eyes to sort of the world of IP. And it was just because of a pro bono project that I had, volunteered, email, one of those emails came through on the, on the law firm, listserv. And I volunteered. I thought this sounds interesting. And then at TaylorMade, I really just fell into it as part of the responsibilities for Global Corporate Counsel.
And was that also where you found your scholarship being informed in the direction of enforcement? I noticed
Absolutely.
that enforcement was your focus.
That's right. Exactly. Absolutely. Because that's what I was doing for a good chunk of the time, was thinking about how we as a company and an IP holder and an IP creator wanted to be an enforcer, and that we didn't want to be the hammer that, or the bully, as I've written about. But we really were thoughtful about how we went about enforcement, and very, I would say, nuanced in a way. I mean, part of it was that, at the time, TaylorMade's mark was, it was absolutely with secondary meaning and quite strong, and it's, quite famous within the golfing circles, but, it's still a descriptive term, in its origin. And so we understood that, right? And we understood that, and we took it to heart that we had maybe a more limited circle of enforcement possibilities where we'd feel comfortable about being reasonable. And unfortunately, when I started researching in that area, not all companies feel similarly, which actually was a surprise to me.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think that the rhetoric that we hear in the media, in, honestly, judges, in some of their court opinions where they talk about, strong marks, they look at evidence. One article in particular really was informative. This goes back to, I want to say the early 2000s, and Sandra Ryerson and oh my goodness, I'm going to forget Dev. Why can't I remember his last name? But they wrote yes, I believe, no, because there's another Dev that they were both at Thomas Jefferson Law School at the time. Okay. Yeah. Not Dev from Oxford, but who also does really great work. But he's now, he sort of moved around. But anyways, I'll find that and I can link the article. But they wrote a great article, I think it was in Cardozo Law Review, on genericism, and arguing that courts were really sort of incentivizing, in a way, the bad behavior of trademark holders in trying to combat genericide. And that really struck out to me, right? That, these courts are relying on evidence of, for example, cease and desist letters, the dictionary, letters to the dictionary, right? To say, don't use my trademark as, as an adjective. And while I can understand, that we want companies to, to utilize their trademarks are very important, right, in the marketplace. I believe strongly in trademark protection. There's a line, right? There's a fine line there. And I think that, unfortunately, courts and like I mentioned, the rhetoric in the media have just sort of blown up what reasonableness might be. And that has incentivized some companies that don't mind, being unreasonable, to just go for the absolute maximum protection that they can possibly get.
I love how you still talk about trademarks as if you do it.
I know, right?
And I hope you never walk away from it.
Yeah, no, it's a passion.
We need all the help we can get.
That's right. Yeah.
So at some point you say, okay, it's time for a career switch and academia backend. Mm-hmm. Tell us about how you made that transition.
Yeah, so it has always been at the back of my mind. When I was in law school, I was a teaching assistant. I was a research assistant many times. And so, I had always that interest in the research and the writing aspect. When I was clerking, I wrote my first sort of full-length article. It was a survey of the Indiana corporate legal opinions for that year that I was clerking. And so, which I actually got published in the Indiana Law Journal. And so it had always been something in the back of my mind. But as you sort of pointed out, I sort of fell into intellectual property, and also then thereby my research agenda, right? So it wasn't really until my in-house life that I realized how passionate I was about IP, and in particular about enforcement of IP, both at the domestic and international levels. And so I think it was really in that phase where I was able to take some time, being in-house, the hours are extremely flexible. You have no billables, right? I mean, honestly, aside from being in academia, I think in-house life is one of the best jobs a lawyer can have if you want to practice law. And that just gave me the opportunity to really have that time to think about, the fullness of a research agenda, what it would mean to be an academic. I was, again, luck had a lot to play with it in the sense that my law school held sort of a boot camp workshop that prepared you to go on the market, kind of gave you sort of the ins and outs. I also had made some connections in San Diego. And so I really credit Lisa Ramsey at USD Law for a lot of help in, looking over my article, thinking, inviting me to guest lecture in her class so I can sort of say, yes, this is what I want to do after having done it in a real law school class. And then, just making that transition, which, I would say coming from practice was fairly, I would say challenging because, I wasn't in that academic, milieu where, I knew about conferences and, never having been a fellow, didn't really understand until I got into academia about, the value of workshopping your paper to, as many workshops as you possibly can before making it into sort of, that stellar article that you're so proud of.
And Lisa is great.
Yeah.
And now, as you were describing it, it just occurred to me the trajectory from in-house counsel to where you are must have given you a type of perspective that somebody that might have gone through the regular clerking and then maybe a couple of years in practice and then academia early on would never have received.
Yeah, I mean, I believe all of us have our own sort of unique perspective in life, right? We all have our own paths that we take. And yeah, I mean, being in two law firms and then in-house and then academia, I definitely think it provided me with sort of this, fairly fulsome, that prior to that clerking, fulsome view of what lawyers can do. But then I also, like I said, got sort of an insight into what lawyers can do even beyond legal practice, right? So the general counsel, for example, at TaylorMade at the time, really, was a great model for, being both the, he would talk a lot about this, being both the lawyer, but also the business counselor, right? And really thinking through, in a more holistic manner, what we were doing, right? So it's not just we were, and he was sort of, the CEO's right-hand guy, giving him both legal advice, but also saying, how does this overlay onto the business? And so I really do think I bring that sort of that business side and that practical, realistic side into, my thinking and, when I was teaching into the classroom as well, which, could be a little different from, somebody who maybe just practiced law in your standard law firm.
And I think that's tremendously important for folks who watch this video to know. One is that there are different pathways to success.
Absolutely.
And two, if you open your mind to opportunities, you never know when opportunity will come knocking and take you in a completely different direction.
Absolutely.
You thought that you might.
That's right. That's right.
So tell us now about that journey into academia. You end up in St. Louis.
That's right. That's right.
Walk us through from that point to Suffolk.
Yeah, so, St. Louis was a great, stopover, in the Midwest. My husband and I didn't expect to honestly enjoy St. Louis as much as we did, both as a city, but also, as an academic community. They were, all the faculty there were just so welcoming and warm. They really, sort of folded us into sort of the, family of law faculty, and, invited us to, multiple occasions. There was a book club, there was, a writing group. And so there was really, really great intellectual, but also social activity going on with everybody's spouses and children, our partners and the like. So that was really lovely. I think though, we came to a point where we were thinking, my husband's job, he had been telecommuting, with a company based in Boston. And they were just asking him to, fly out more. And I had the flexibility at the time to do that, but it would just got wearing. We had our first child at the time. And so, when I met Jessica Silby at a workshop at American University, and talking to her about the possibility of a visit somewhere on the East Coast for a little bit, she's like, well, Suffolk Law is hiring. Why don't you apply? I thought, oh, okay, that seems to make sense. And so I did. And, we moved out to Boston and Suffolk Law in 2013. And I just, also had a great time there. I missed my colleagues, my former colleagues at SLU, and, I'm still in touch with some of them, and they're just, they remain a really great place. But Suffolk, it was also just a great move as well.
I'm going to ask you about your time as associate dean, because that's also, I think, important in fleshing out your leadership journey. But before that, tell us one or two things about your scholarship, and which ones do you think are those that you're most proud of?
Yeah, so I think my I would say the first article that I'm most proud of is my Shaming Trademark Bullies piece. I think it's something that if somebody knows about my trademark law research and scholarship, they probably know that piece. I wrote it, published it in 2011, just before my son was born, who's 11 years old now. So it's kind of funny to think, to sort of think back on it, and unfortunately, kind of reflect on. Not much has changed. It might be, in terms of the problem that I identified, which was, over enforcement by what I call trademark bullies, and my suggestion to utilize shaming as a way to combat, as a an extrajudicial tool to combat the bullying. And, I think it still has resonance. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm still quite proud of it. But I also think that it really allowed me to make a mark in the trademark legal scholarship. Oh, why hasn't it changed? Well, I think if anything, trademark law has just gotten more protective of large trademark companies for a variety of reasons that I don't think we have time to get into. I think the other reason is just that litigation has gotten just that much more expensive, right? Not accounting for inflation. I think just the time it takes, COVID, that hiring an attorney and going through any kind of litigation is still is even more expensive than it had been in 2011, which then means that defendants or, targets of over enforcement really have no choice but to capitulate to the demands that a trademark, bully might make of them, which then just sort of encourages and incentivizes, right, the bully more. And that was sort of the problem that I really, argued about in that piece, that there's no counter, consequences, and the same is still true. So I think it just, magnified because of, the expenses, because of the importance of social media. I think it's just been, we haven't seen any major action by courts or by Congress to combat that.
Well, you planted the seed, so.
Exactly. So maybe somebody can do that.
Yes. Well, when the time for that idea has come, then it will take root. Hopefully. Do you have a close runner-up in terms of?
Yeah, I think my close runner-up is something that I've been working on for the last 4 years, which is kind of looking at enforcement through the right to repair angle. And so my right to repair and IP law piece that I co-authored with Ofer Sinai that appeared in Fordham Law Review in 2019. I think that's my runner-up to Shaming Trademark Bullies. That was pre-tenure, right? It was sort of a really great piece for my tenure file. But the right to repair piece was my first co-authored piece, and I felt comfortable to do that because it was post-tenure, and it was really one of those great Ofer and I have had a great collaboration ever since on our repair and IP articles. But that was sort of the start of it. And we really were sort of one of the first to talk about how IP laws and the enforcement of IP laws were really stymieing repair. And that's just, really given us, tremendous opportunities to talk globally about this issue.
And how do you divide up the work, and how do you make sure you still speak in one voice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something that all co-authors, deal with. Ofer and I have really great complementary, first of all, styles, but also, areas of interest and expertise. And so Ofer is a patent attorney by trade. And so I let him take on the patent stuff. And then I take on basically everything else. We sort of share trade secrets because we're both newcomers to the trade secret area. We rely heavily on Sharon Sandin's advice, for example, when it comes to talking anything about trade secrets. But otherwise, we sort of divide up the work that way, right? He'll talk about patent law, and I'll talk about copyright and trademark law, and then we share sort of trade secrets. And then honestly, we both sort of, we write our pieces, and then we try to together go through the piece to try to make sure it's in one voice. But like I said, we actually write very similarly, which was just a coincidence. And I've worked with others where, it's not as, similar. And so you generally need to appoint one of the two or three to say, okay, I will go through and I will, put the gloss on it that will make it one voice. But, Ofer and I have a really great relationship where I think we already do. And then, I'll make tweaks here and there to make sure that it, does 100%.
And what is one thing that folks who watch this video should go away knowing about this right to repair article?
Just that, there's so many pieces to it that it's not just, patent law, it's not just trade secret law or trademark. I mean, really, this issue is sort of, really touches upon all the different types of law, which is, I think, unique, particularly to academics, because, we're so used to, or we've gotten used to, I think, kind of specializing, right, in our own areas. You've got the patent conference, right? You've got trademark law workshops, you've got international IP workshops. And this is really one that really spans all of it. And also at the international level too. And I think that's really one thing that folks should know. That's not just about one particular piece of IP law. It's really about all of it.
And if you send me a link to that and your trademark bullying article, I'll be happy to include it in the.
Oh, awesome. Great. Excellent. Thank you. And I'll also send the genericism one so we can properly attribute the article to Sandra and her co-author.
Yes. Definitely. Okay. So now Associate Dean for Academic Affairs.
Yeah.
Well, what is this job, Associate Dean for Academic Affairs? And
yeah. Yeah.
And how did you do it?
Yeah, it's a big job. And I mean, I will preface it that, every school does it differently, but basically in a nutshell, right, you're in charge of the academic life, right, of the school. And I was super fortunate. And one of the reasons why I said yes when the dean called me was because I had a co-associate dean for academic affairs, Patrick Shin, and he was just incredible. I mean, he was just one of those wonderful people that, you just want to work with. And so he really made it easy, honestly. And so we split up the work, right? Some of it was historical. There's always been two associate deans for academic affairs at Suffolk Law because of the size. It's just a really large law school. It's over, I want to say 1,100. I think at the height, it was 1,400 law students in all the divisions. And so for that school of that size, you really need two associate deans. And, right now they still have two, but Pat was promoted to be vice dean, which is really great. Now, Kim McLaurin took over my associate dean for academic affairs position. But like I said, it was really historical in terms of the, what we call our portfolios. But I managed, really the curriculum with Pat. We thought about it together in terms of, the overall curriculum of legal study, so from the first year to, to upper level, what kinds of electives, we have our standard concentrations, right? Those are decided by the faculty, but, within that, what kind of courses, who should be teaching the classes, what's the schedule going to be, what kinds of opportunities to students do you want to provide? So, and then, how do you incentivize the faculty to do that? So, and also too, with their committee work and service work to the law school and university. So it was really a fairly broad ranging, internal looking position.
And do you have advice for current or aspiring associate deans for academic affairs on how to stay sane and how not to become public enemy number one by the end of
Yeah.
the tenure.
Oh my goodness, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say take everything not personally, right? That it is quite true. Everyone jokes about it, but you are going to learn things about your faculty that you can't unlearn. But maybe after you step down, you could forget, that you will, be treated to sometimes emails and behaviors that you wouldn't have as just a normal faculty colleague, because now everybody sees you as the man, right? You are part of the administration, and nobody can unsee you in that role until you step down. So I'd say just everyone told me grow a thick skin, and it's true, because also too you will work through a variety of different negotiations with your faculty. And even if you come out on a win-win solution, don't expect to be thanked, right? So I really learned the meaning of a thankless job as Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. And that's not to say that it wasn't really great and fun. And I really enjoyed being part of the leadership team to think about strategy, think about the curriculum, and also just to make my colleagues' life better by the scheduling, by giving them input into what they wanted to teach and their scheduling and their service work. So I think there's lots of reasons to do the job. But I think in order to stay sane, you really do just need to know why you're doing it, because there'll be days when you question your own sanity for doing the job.
And somewhere down that road, Boyd started knocking.
Yeah, right.
So tell us about that transition, but also as you now sit where you are as dean, reflect back and tell us how important it was, or maybe not important it was, to be associate dean for academic affairs.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much by being the associate dean for academic affairs, just by doing, but also from being mentored by my dean, Andy Perlman. When I took on the associate dean role, when he asked me to serve, I really did see it as a service. I didn't take it thinking that I would become dean at some point. I thought, well, maybe, but I'm not sure. And that's not why I'm taking it. I'm taking it so that I can give back to the school and really help make my colleagues' life better. That was really my why, that sort of got me through those tough days. And it really wasn't until 4 years into it that after attending the Promoting Diversity in the Law School Dean's Workshop, and I'll give a shout out to that workshop that's co-hosted, co-sponsored by Seattle University. Annette Clark at the time, Kelly Testy had actually started it at Seattle. And then Mark Alexander also jumped on as a co-sponsor from Villanova Law. And I'll just give him a really great shout out, because that was really an eye-opening workshop for me. It really gave me insight into what is a dean's job. I mean, it's one thing you see your dean running around, in and out of the office. You hear them talk about, meetings with donors and alums, but really being walked through the entirety of a job through panels and through different speakers who were sitting deans was really invaluable. And so after I left, that was in 2018. After I left that, I was still undecided as to whether or not I wanted to, go for it. And it wasn't until I would say, 2 or 3 years later that I decided, yeah, I think, I'm in a position both with my skill set, in terms of the number of years I've had under my belt to sort of see the fullness of the position, talking with my dean, and also too, him giving me lots of opportunities to sort of see and try out for myself whether or not I'd actually really enjoy the job. So that was sort of the background to it. And, Boyd, I mean, it just was this, incredible opportunity. I knew 2 of the faculty members here who had reached out to me, when the position was posted, to say, hey, maybe you should think about us. Because let me say, I probably could never have imagined, if you had asked me in 2021, where if I were to be dean, where that would be, I probably would not have had Las Vegas and Boyd Law up at the top of the list. But it kind of goes back to sort of something that you said earlier, which is you really just have to be open to opportunity. And that was really what this is, right? It was this incredible opportunity to be dean, but it did mean that I had to leave and move my family across the country, from Boston to, where we were very comfortable and really enjoyed our community. And I loved my Suffolk colleagues. I loved working with Pat. I loved working with Andy and Kim and all of the leadership team at Suffolk Law. But, taking this opportunity gave me the ability to be dean and to see how it is for myself.
Did they get a vote?
Did my family get a vote, or did Suffolk?
Yes.
Oh, my family. Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, everybody handles their, personal lives differently. But for me, if my family's not on board, then I, wouldn't have even put my application in, right? So my husband and I had a very, serious conversation about, could we see ourselves living in Las Vegas? And so we did a lot of research on, the community, on the law school before I even applied. And so when the offer came, it was easier to say yes, right? We still needed to get the kids on board. And, we bribed them with a pool and, and separate rooms, which we delivered on, and they are quite happy. And we visited out here before I said yes, absolutely. But yeah, they did have a vote. So
what surprised you about living in Las Vegas?
Wow. So a lot of things have been surprising. In neutral ways. One, just random, is the wind, right? You don't realize it, but it actually gets very windy out here. And instead of having rainstorms or lightning storms, you have windstorms. So the wind has been quite surprising, sort of on a superficial, sort of personal level. I'd say on a more substantive level, what is surprising, I think, about Las Vegas, but also Nevada as a whole, is that higher education is not yet fully incorporated into everybody's mindset, right? That the thought that in order to succeed in life, you need higher education is not 100% fully adopted here. And I would say that in Las Vegas in particular. And the reason is that because of the great, sort of entertainment and hospitality and tourism market that Las Vegas has here, folks previous to COVID, for example, didn't need higher education. And yet they were making six figures, right, in their salaries. COVID, I think, showed them that could go all away, in almost overnight. And that, a more services type economy where you don't need to rely on in-person help, could be a way to diversify the economy, the tourism economy. Yeah. But that's a challenge, right? And that's a challenge for all of us in higher ed. It's not just unique to Boyd Law, but that was surprising, because I've lived in other states, many other states actually, in the United States, where that wasn't true, and particularly in Massachusetts, where I was for 9 years, that wasn't true at all.
Do you see an opportunity for the law school or the university or both in tapping into this?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. And we are, 100% working towards this as an opportunity, because there are so many folks out there who, pre-COVID would never have thought to go to college, would never have thought to go on and get a JD or some other higher, post bachelor's degree. And so absolutely, we are, 100% seeing this as an opportunity. I see it as a way, to, like I said, to be accessible, to be at, first and foremost, an educational, transformative opportunity for folks who, for whatever reason, didn't think that they needed or wanted that higher level of education.
And what does that look like in terms of specific programming that UNLV has?
So that looks like partnerships and outreach, right? So one of the, and pipeline programs. So one of the things that I really feel strongly about, because I'm a product of it, is pipeline programming. And so just recently, for example, I visited a high school, North Las Vegas high school called Canyon Springs, where they have a pre-law magnet program for students who think that they might want to one day go into law school. And, these are high school students, right? So they still have to get through college and then get to law school. But reaching in to those high schools, being there on, a panel of other just amazingly qualified actually they all turned out to be women because we were talking to women, female students, but just telling them my story, telling them about that, my takeaways, you got to be open to opportunity. And that was just really a wonderful way to sort of, plant that seed that I think these pipeline programs do. The other way we do it at the law school is we have a pre-law fellowship program. We call it Justice Douglas Pre-Law Fellowship Program, named after the first African-American judge on the Nevada Supreme Court, who's still living. And he works with us very closely on this pre-law fellowship program, where we bring in students, college students, to campus for a week in the summer. And we give them this really great opportunity to experience law school through, some mock classes, visits to judge chambers and the courtroom, as well as to law firms, and then also opportunities to give back to the community. So it's really I'm thinking, how can we bring it into even lower grades like middle school or even elementary school?
And you've also been very active and engaging institutionally with government agencies like the USPTO. And,
absolutely.
Tell us about the latest and exciting initiative at the USPTO. The USPTO has had now.
Yeah, that's right.
The law school.
That's right. Yeah. So we're so excited. Just a couple of weeks ago, we opened the Patent and Trademark Resource Center here at UNLV, and it's housed in the main library on campus, which is this beautiful building, and it has a really cool, right on the first floor, amidst this really awesome, sort of lobby area. The resource center is housed. Now, as you and I know, we were talking about, right, everything is electronic, right? So you don't really need sort of a space for it, but there's a physical space where a librarian, a reference librarian, one of our own reference librarians will be there. Also, a professor, here on the library faculty tenure track, who specializes in IP, as well as a librarian from the main office, will be there to assist people who do want to walk in to use it, but also probably just be responding to emails and the like, and doing virtual training sessions. But it was so great. The USPTO, I think he's the interim director of the West Coast office, flew out to help us open it, gave remarks and was around for training that day. And so it's just really amazing that, when you asked me about surprises, just so great to see the USPTO really doing that community outreach. It was, a number of years in the making to have this particular office open, the resource center open, but the fact that they agreed, and we went through the process, and now we have the Southern Nevada Resource Center, housed at UNLV, I think just shows, how we're just really trying to create these public-private, public-public partnerships that really will benefit the community.
And who are you targeting in terms of this outreach and this resource?
So this particular resource, I think, targets, our small businesses, our entrepreneurs, of which there are quite a few, and it really sort of fits in with UNLV's overall strategy with respect to economic development and innovation, right? So we already have, actually, just this morning, I was at our innovation center, which we call Blackfire, with this huge campus where they're providing just office space, support, legal support, business support to local small businesses, as well as to other tech companies who want a foothold in Nevada. And so this, having the resource center available, both, physically on campus, but also just more broadly, online in the, Southern Nevada area, is really, it fits in with that innovation, economic development, targeting our, local community. And again, going back to that idea of diversification, right? That, tourism is great when you have tourists, but when something happens like the pandemic and you don't have tourists, well, then we need to, have another source of economic development, stream that comes in that doesn't rely heavily on just one sector.
Absolutely. Now, you're about 100 days, I think.
Yeah.
Into the job. So I can ask you, how
Yeah.
does a typical day in the life of Dean Grinvald look like?
Whew. Well, just this morning, right, I went for a tour of our Blackfire offices, and then came back and I had some emails, and then I have some meetings later on with my leadership team. I do one-on-ones weekly, bi-weekly for some, weekly for others. And then it could also be a dinner, right, with an alum, an event. Perhaps right now we're getting into holiday party events. And so tomorrow, for example, we're going to have our last faculty meeting of the year, where we're going to also celebrate our faculty scholarship afterwards. And so we'll have a nice reception highlighting the scholarship of our faculty, which has been tremendous. We have at least 2 faculty members who are publishing or just come out with their new books. And we also have just a number of different, articles being published as well. And then tomorrow night, we have our adjunct faculty reception. Again, kind of a holiday party to thank our adjunct faculty for all that they do. I think one of the things I learned, as associate dean, was that adjunct faculty, they come in and they teach, and they're so expert, and you rely heavily on them, but they don't really feel part of the community because they're in and out, right? And so having this reception for them hopefully will show them how much we value them and how much part of our community we think they are.
And almost you are the embodiment of that community by virtue of being the dean of the law school,
That's right.
and who you are, I think certainly helps to bring people together. Now, all deans, yourself included, interfaces with a whole variety of stakeholder groups, and you talk
That's
about adjuncts, but there are also alumni, there's faculty that you talked about, the students, of course, and then there's the university administration. So walk us through how you have developed skills, or you have employed skills to be able to successfully navigate these relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, just being, a good listener, but also wanting to be a good partner, right? So I approach all these new relationships that I'm making, from that standpoint, right? That I want to listen to what that person has to say about how they see themselves vis-a-vis the law school, maybe how they were treated, if they don't feel like they were treated so nicely by prior administration, but then also to say, I'm here to be a partner, right? I'm a collaborator. I want to make informed decisions and collaborate on, perhaps the pre-decision making process, and then even post-decision making process, right? Even if, decisions don't go exactly the way I thought they were going to go because of that collaborative process. And so that's sort of how I think I view my role here, both in terms of with the university, with my, direct supervisor, the provost, or, the president, but also the other deans on campus. There are a number of them here. We have about 10 or 12 other deans on campus. And then also too, just within my own building with staff, leadership team, faculty, and students. And then as you mentioned, adjunct faculty too.
And challenges. All deans face challenges. Somehow they just magnetically attract these challenges, I suppose.
Yeah,
what would you say?
Yeah.
I'd
say, yeah. I'm sorry.
Is the main challenge that you're facing, all that you foresee the school will face?
I mean, I think, all institutions have their challenges. I feel very lucky that one of my challenges is not the support that the law school receives from the main institution, or even the main community, or as a state school at the legislature. Boyd Law is supremely supported and seen as valuable by all those constituents, which is really fantastic, because I really, you look across the country these days, and that unfortunately is not the case, right? For every institution, and particularly state institutions. So that's not my challenge. My challenge, I think, still is sort of getting our story out. That yes, we're seen as valuable, as a way to bring in lawyers, but my sort of as I had said earlier, my takeaway is that we don't just produce lawyers, right? We produce problem solvers. We produce professionals who can go out there and really do whatever they want, right? Just recently, we had an alum appointed as the president of the Raiders, right? she's a lawyer, right? She practiced as a lawyer, and now she's the president of a major NFL, franchise here in Las Vegas. And then, she hired a general counsel who just happened to be, another alum of ours. So, I think that getting that out, getting that side of, us as not just a law school that produces the lawyers, your stereotypical lawyers that you see on TV or on our billboard. If anybody's ever been to Las Vegas, we have an inordinate number of billboards advertising personal injury lawyers. That has its place, but that's not the only thing that we do as a law school. So I think getting that story out is my challenge, and I hopefully will meet that challenge in the coming years.
And where would you like to see the law school in 5 to 10 years?
In 5 to 10 years, I want us to really be seen as a regional powerhouse. First and foremost, educating Nevadan attorneys by both, being, the source for Nevada legal education, but also a brain magnet, right? Kind of bringing in folks from outside of Nevada, because the opportunities here really are incredible. And we as an institution are not going to ever be able to graduate enough lawyers to fill the need, right? Both on the legal need, but also other professional needs. And so there is fantastic opportunity for folks from other, states, from the region, from across the country, who are looking for sunshine almost all the time, great temperate weather, and, just a really lovely way of life out here.
Are you offering, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's right. That's right.
Are you offering folks who are not based in Las Vegas the opportunity to also be part of your community?
We are on a limited basis. So we have an LLM program, the first of its kind, that's focused on gaming law and regulation. And we have an executive hybrid track that we are piloting, allowing international attorneys to take gaming classes through the LLM program. And so that's a pilot. It's slow going in terms of thinking about how we can leverage what we know about technology and our online teaching from the pandemic, and say how can we bring that to others who maybe cannot be in Las Vegas full time. And I absolutely am thinking about that with respect to the entire state. We're a pretty large state, almost the size of, geographically almost as long as California, particularly where Las Vegas is this, at the very, very tip of Nevada, and you've got the whole rest of the state. And we're going to have to think about technology in terms of getting to other parts of the state, but also, as you mentioned, bringing folks in on a limited basis, enjoying Las Vegas, but still getting the benefit of our expertise in a variety of different subject matters.
Great, thanks. Well, this brings me to the end of our conversation. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you and hearing things about your journey, which I didn't know about. So, and really enjoyed learning. Thank you for the inspiring journey and the decisions that you have made. And we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
On this new chapter of your life.
Thank you so much, Daryl. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.